But today is the day that I declare my decision of being done with ducking and dodging the dope description. Hoping humming hymns of humility would keep me humble. Really, I just been hunkered down, hiding out in the safe haven of this honeysuckle honeycomb called I've done that already.
Everything we thought we knew about Malcolm-Jamal Warner's disappearance might be a lie. Was television's golden boy forced into exile by his most powerful mentor, turned rival Bill Cosby? That's the whisper catching fire in late-night group chats and family living rooms, from Philadelphia to Los Angeles. And as the smoke clears on Cosby's so-called untouchable empire, now riddled with lawsuits, legal setbacks, and a reputation in tatters, new leaks suggest that Warner himself could be alive, lurking just out of sight, orchestrating a quiet return that could upend the entire narrative of 90s television history. The very possibility has Cosby's dwindling circle of defenders scrambling to contain the fallout, wondering whether one of the industry's most carefully guarded secrets is about to explode in the public eye. Every outlet, every live stream, every nostalgic fan wants to know, did Cosby bury a career, or did he get played by the very protege he once called his son? The documents being whispered about aren't just recycled rumor. They paint a picture of a chess match that may have started in the heyday of The Cosby Show and never really ended. This isn't a fan theory posted on a message board. This is about cracks appearing in a story Hollywood has fed us for decades. The tale goes like this. Warner, at the peak of his fame, saw the warning signs: too many enemies, too much jealousy, too many secrets swirling around the man who called himself America's dad. Cosby's name, whispered in legal corridors and Hollywood backrooms, was tied not only to allegations of misconduct, but also to efforts to silence those closest to him. And now, with Cosby's legal team drowning under the weight of scandal, one question grows louder. Did Malcolm-Jamal Warner slip away on his own terms, leaving Cosby holding the bag? Or was he forced into the shadows to protect himself from a machine that would rather see him erased than speaking out? For years, Warner's absence was brushed off as the natural fade of a child star. Some called it Hollywood burnout, others a lack of opportunities. But insiders have long claimed it was something far darker. Warner knew too much about Cosby too soon, and his silence was worth more than his career. Some allege that money quietly exchanged hands, payments disguised as royalties, hush fees, or support. But if the FBI leaks are to be believed, the flow of money didn't stop. It drained Cosby's fortune for years, funneled to accounts linked to Warner's mother, family trusts, or shell corporations tucked away overseas. And if Warner himself orchestrated it, then Cosby wasn't the master manipulator. He was the mark, fooled into paying the very man he thought he had silenced. The idea sounds outlandish until you consider the details that never added up. The sudden drop in Warner's career, despite his undeniable talent. The odd disappearances from public events. The refusal to cash in on nostalgia tours or reunion specials, even as other cast members embraced the spotlight. The leaks now suggest Warner was never gone. He was hidden by those who wanted him safe from Cosby's wrath, hidden by a network of allies who feared what would happen if he spoke too soon. And just like the stories of Shakur fleeing Vegas in the dead of night, the whispers about Warner's escape take on a life of their own. Some claim he fled the country, retreating to quiet enclaves where Hollywood's spotlight couldn't reach. Others say he lived under the radar in plain sight, moving through everyday life while the world debated his fate. The more you look, the stranger it gets. Reports of quiet bank withdrawals, former staffers claiming envelopes of cash moved through Cosby's estate, unexplained checks sent to accounts no one wanted to talk about, even whispers of lookalikes being sent to public events in Warner's name, ensuring fans saw just enough to stop asking questions. Like the infamous autopsy anomalies in Shakur's case, Warner's story is filled with gaps, contradictions, and loose ends. And the longer Cosby fights in courtrooms, the more these threads are being pulled loose. Cosby's legal nightmare has given oxygen to these theories. The man once hailed as the architect of black television success now stands accused of running something closer to a criminal enterprise, covering tracks, silencing voices, and manipulating finances. The FBI leaks frame Warner not as a casualty of this empire, but as the ultimate escape artist, someone who flipped the script and turned his silence into a weapon.
But it's like, it's real. You know, she'll do something, I'm like, well, you know what, I did not see it that way. And then it makes me more, it just reminds me just in life, how there are so many different perspectives. People can be looking at the same thing and have very different perspectives.
And if that's true, then Cosby didn't bury Warner. Warner buried Cosby. Before we get too lost in speculation, let's look at the timeline that has fueled this conspiracy for years. Warner, beloved for his role as Theo Huxtable, was everywhere in the 80s and early 90s. Then, almost overnight, the spotlight dimmed. Officially, he moved on to smaller projects, directing gigs and stage performances. But fans noticed the gaps, the long stretches without appearances, the unexplained no-shows, the refusal to engage with the revival machine that made stars of his peers. And when Cosby's scandals erupted years later, Warner's absence suddenly looked less like coincidence and more like foresight. Did he know what was coming? Did he distance himself deliberately, not just to save his image but to save his life? And then comes the biggest twist. Financial leaks suggesting that Cosby himself may have bankrolled Warner's disappearance. If the files are accurate, Cosby poured money into settlements, retainers, and quiet family payments that bled his fortune dry. Payments that insiders now claim weren't just about victims, they were about Malcolm. The kid America adored, the son Cosby pretended to have, may have been the one running the longest con of all. It sounds like something out of a thriller, but that's exactly why it has caught fire. Fans, journalists, and conspiracy theorists are all asking the same thing. If Malcolm-Jamal Warner escaped, and if Bill Cosby really was fooled into paying for decades, what happens when the truth finally surfaces? Because one thing is certain, the leaks suggest this story is far from over. The deeper we dive into this labyrinth, the more it feels like the official story about Malcolm-Jamal Warner's supposed downfall was crafted as a distraction, a carefully stitched-up narrative to cover cracks that were never meant to see daylight. The leaked FBI files don't just whisper. They scream that something much stranger was happening behind the curtains, something that flips the entire Warner-Cosby relationship into an elaborate game of survival and deception. The public was told that Malcolm's career stumbled because of controversies, missteps, and bad business decisions. But the documents hint at a different story, one in which Warner may have staged an exit strategy so clean, so calculated, that it turned Bill Cosby, his longtime mentor, into both financier and fall guy without him even realizing it. According to these files, federal investigators stumbled upon financial discrepancies dating back to the mid-2000s. Millions flowing in and out of shell accounts, hidden under layers of charitable organizations and production companies. On paper, it looked like sloppy accounting, maybe even embezzlement. But buried in interviews with anonymous insiders, a stranger pattern emerges. Warner wasn't just vanishing into obscurity. He was allegedly building an off-books escape fund, a stash that could bankroll a life in the shadows. And here's the twist. Much of that money, intentionally or not, was traced back to Cosby himself. Whether through shared ventures, blind investments, or outright manipulation, Cosby's fortune may have been tapped as the silent engine driving Warner's disappearance. This revelation alone flips decades of assumptions. Fans thought Warner remained loyal, stuck in the shadow of the Cosby Show legacy, while Cosby carried the weight of scandal. But what if Warner saw the storm long before it broke? What if he anticipated the empire collapsing and decided to slip away, leaving Cosby holding the debts, the scrutiny, and the inevitable collapse of reputation? The leaked files describe this not as a spur of the moment decision, but as a long, played chess match, meticulously prepared years before Cosby's own world fell apart in courtrooms and headlines. One chilling detail stands out. Investigators claim that Warner had contacts within the entertainment industry who specialized in identity restructuring, a coded phrase suggesting new passports, offshore accounts, and a life beyond the spotlight. If true, this wasn't just about protecting himself from financial ruin or bad press. It was about building a second identity entirely, one that would allow him to vanish while the world was distracted by Cosby's scandals. The files even note a rumored meeting in the Caribbean, where Warner was allegedly seen with consultants known for moving high-profile figures off the grid. Whether this was Warner himself or a lookalike planted to muddy the waters remains unconfirmed, but the coincidence is enough to keep the conspiracy alive. Meanwhile, Cosby's side of the story takes on a darker, almost tragic undertone. The FBI records suggest that Cosby may have been funneling money to what he believed were joint ventures with Warner, projects meant to preserve both of their legacies as cultural icons. Instead, that money allegedly disappeared into networks of offshore holdings. The suggestion is brutal. Cosby thought he was protecting Warner, when in reality, Warner may have been orchestrating his own escape, leaving Cosby unknowingly footing the bill. If true, this makes Cosby less the puppet master and more the puppet. A man so consumed with controlling the narrative of his own life that he never noticed someone else had rewritten the script entirely. And it gets stranger. Testimonies in the leaked files mention that Warner had become increasingly disillusioned with Hollywood in the years before he faded from the spotlight. Friends recalled him dropping cryptic comments about how the industry eats its own, and how he refused to be a casualty of the same machine that had consumed so many child stars before him.
On the red carpet, he's been a successful actor, but to your point, you encourage him to be this Renaissance person. So then he receives this Grammy for Jesus Children. Let me play what he had to say.
Did your mom come tonight? Is she your date?
Yeah, she's my date.
Oh, I love it when boys bring their moms.
Right?
You're proud mama's boy.
Definitely, definitely.
He said, proud mama's boy.
Yes. Yes. He was my baby. He was my baby.
Some even claim he referenced historical figures who faked their own demise or disappeared to start new lives elsewhere. Whether these were throwaway comments or breadcrumbs pointing to his larger plan is impossible to say, but they add weight to the theory that Warner's exit wasn't accidental. It was designed. Now, the big question isn't just whether Warner escaped, it's why. Was he running from financial ruin, distancing himself from Cosby before the scandals imploded, or preparing for some grand reemergence when the dust finally settled? The FBI files hint at all three possibilities. They describe encrypted emails between Warner and unnamed associates discussing the return. The phrasing is vague but tantalizing, suggesting Warner wasn't planning a permanent retreat but rather a calculated absence, a way to disappear just long enough for the heat to die down before stepping back into the light with control over his own narrative. For Cosby, the irony is almost cinematic. While he fought legal battles, faced public outrage, and watched his legacy disintegrate, the man he once positioned as his protege may have been thriving in secrecy, funded by Cosby's own resources. The files don't prove this outright, but the implications are devastating. If true, it means the mentor-protege relationship wasn't just strained, it was weaponized. Warner, the student, may have turned the table on his teacher in the ultimate reversal of roles. Every leak, every detail adds to the mystery, and the entertainment world is left to wrestle with uncomfortable questions. Did Warner outsmart the system and everyone in it? Did Cosby, for all his cunning and power, become the ultimate mark in a con that played out over decades? And perhaps most unsettling, if Warner is still out there, what does he plan to do with the silence he has carefully curated? Will he reveal himself, or will the myth only grow stronger with every rumor, every whispered sighting, every leaked page of a government file? To the casual observer, the story of Warner's supposed disappearance sounds like the stuff of late night gossip or internet fan fiction. But when you put the pieces together, the leaked files, the odd gaps in his public appearances, the sudden vanishing of projects that were in development but never released, it begins to look like something much more deliberate, something orchestrated. Consider this: Warner, a man who grew up under the world's watchful eye, suddenly steps away from mainstream headlines. For years, his appearances dwindled, interviews became rare, and new work was sporadic at best. Fans chalked it up to Hollywood burnout or the shadow of Cosby's scandals eclipsing his legacy. But according to the FBI notes, this may not have been absence at all. It may have been camouflage. Several witnesses in the files claim Warner was spotted in places where he had no reason to be: a remote villa in Costa Rica, a discreet artist community in Havana, and even at a European jazz festival under a different name. None of these sightings were ever verified, but the consistency of them across unrelated sources paints a troubling picture. If Warner did indeed slip away, he may not have been hiding at all. He may have simply been living under a new identity, just far enough from the spotlight to remain invisible to the mainstream eye. And then comes the strange trail of art and music. In 2018, a collection of anonymous tracks began surfacing online. Smooth, jazz-influenced spoken word pieces that bore an uncanny resemblance to Warner's style. No one ever claimed authorship, and copyright hunters quickly flagged the files as unknown origin. But fans swore the cadence, the tone, even the phrasing sounded like him. One blogger went as far as to compare the vocal print of the recordings to Warner's older interviews, claiming a 90% match. Was this Warner testing the waters, dipping his toes back into public consciousness without exposing himself directly? Or was it simply coincidence? The FBI files don't say, but they note the emergence of these works under the section labeled Possible Resurfacing, a detail too precise to dismiss as rumor alone. Meanwhile, the Cosby connection only grows more complicated. The files suggest that Cosby's attorneys at one point privately explored the possibility of Warner's disappearance being tied to missing funds from their shared business ventures. Though they never pursued it in court, the theory quietly circulated among insiders that Cosby had been played, that Warner had siphoned resources not just to escape, but to set up an entirely new life. To this day, some of Cosby's former legal aides insist the financial records never balanced, that millions were unaccounted for. If Warner truly was behind it, that would mean Cosby's collapse wasn't only a matter of public scandal. It was also financial devastation, engineered in part by the man he once called family. But if Warner truly escaped, why haven't we seen him resurface? That's the question that gnaws at the heart of this story. Some argue it's fear, that he knows stepping forward would unleash lawsuits, investigations, and the wrath of those who enabled his disappearance. Others say it's about control, that Warner has been quietly crafting the moment for his return, waiting for the industry to crumble under its own scandals so he can re-enter on his own terms. The leaked FBI files even reference encrypted emails allegedly tied to Warner, with one message containing a single chilling line: "The return will not be televised, it will be lived." What does that mean? Is it a taunt, a manifesto, or a clue to something much bigger brewing in the shadows. And then there are the alleged sightings closer to home. A former production assistant swears they saw Warner at a cafe in Atlanta in 2021, sitting with an older woman who looked strikingly like Pamela Warner. No photos were taken, no proof exists, but the story caught fire on social media. Another rumor placed him in Toronto, attending a film festival incognito. Each story alone is shaky, but together they build the myth. It becomes harder to dismiss them all as coincidence when they stretch across borders and years. Add to that the fact that Warner's official representatives rarely respond to these claims, and the silence itself feels like confirmation for those who believe he's alive and well. For Cosby, the humiliation couldn't be sharper. The files paint a picture of a man so obsessed with clearing his own name that he never realized he may have been bankrolling Warner's escape. To be fooled by a protege, to watch millions vanish, to face the courts while your former student slips away untouched. That's the kind of irony only reality could deliver. Whether Warner intended it or not, the outcome is undeniable. Cosby's reputation is in tatters, his fortune diminished, and Warner's myth stronger than ever. So where does this leave us? The FBI leaks don't hand us certainty. They hand us questions. Did Malcolm-Jamal Warner orchestrate a flawless escape while the world was distracted by Cosby's scandals? Did he use Cosby's resources to vanish, leaving his mentor the ultimate fool? Or is this simply the power of conspiracy, fans and insiders weaving coincidence into narrative because the truth feels too bland to accept? The answer may never come, but the possibility alone is explosive. Because if Warner is out there, alive, thriving, and waiting, then the entertainment industry may be on the verge of its most shocking revelation yet. Imagine the fallout, the headlines, the chaos if one day Warner steps forward and confirms it all. Until then, the story remains a riddle, half fact, half speculation, and entirely captivating. And every new leak, every whispered rumor, every sighting in a cafe or jazz festival will only fan the flames higher.